I'm feeling a little better today. After my rant yesterday, watching that little old lady be treated so poorly. And no brave Canadians to stand up for that little old lady. Anyways, have you guys ever heard the story of the Nuremberg trials? Sorry, I gotta put my glasses on. After the Second World War, there were mostly Nazi soldiers and officers that were charged for war crimes. Okay, we have a Geneva Convention, and like other nations in the free world and the Western world, we have war manuals, you know. So that's where war manual. I think I've mentioned it before, where they classify persons and classify residents and so on and so forth. So, anyways, during the war there was a lot of war crimes, and it wasn't just what we call the Jews that were being assassinated and robbed and raped and thrown into camps and so on and so forth. There was also the Gypsies were also attacked as well. So I guess that would be like, you know, kind of Romanian, Transylvania, Hungary, that kind of area. But these guys did heinous crimes to their fellow man. And you see, there's the law of nature not to cause harm to your fellow man. I mean, we are the family of mankind. We all come from different spots on this earth. We all have, you know, different backgrounds, and we all have different cultures. And the reason that we have this diversity on the planet is because, you know, not all cultures can really coincide with each other. So you know, people decide what they can live with, what they're happy with, and so you create a common ground, and then you protect that common ground, and you protect your fellow man within that common ground, so that, you know, say I don't know, somebody next door to you has a culture where it's okay to you know, where it's their culture to practice cannibalism, and your people just don't dig it. So you protect your borders, and you make sure these cannibals, if they do come within your area, on your land, within your jurisdiction, then that they don't cannibalize any of your people. I mean, it's just basic common sense. Well, so these Nazis during the Nuremberg trials. Now, I think there was only one. I believe there might have been only one that didn't get hung, and he was still alive not that long ago. They kept him in prison all his life. I forget his name. But as each one of these guys came up to defend themselves at a court, it's kind of like a world court. You know, their major excuse was, well, I was just following orders. Now, following orders is no excuse, and we do have precedents. It is the way of our people that if you get an order to cause harm, loss, or injury to man, or your fellow man, mankind, that you have a lawful excuse not to obey the order. So these guys, you know, I was just taking orders. They were all hung with the E string of a piano wire. So if you take a look at an E string on a piano, you'll find it's a very thin wire. And basically, when they got hung, they were decapitated. So yeah, it's good. Maybe look up the Nuremberg trials and see how the free world deals with those folks that go out of their way to kill innocent people. So the reason I was thinking about this, so after watching the granny get assaulted and terrorized, she was terrorized by those terrorists, whoever the hell they were. Somebody said they were Tifa, whatever. I don't care. Each individual that terrorized that little old lady, and each individual that did not step up on that little old lady's behalf is just as guilty as the ones terrorizing her. So I'm watching. So I had other stuff to do, so I had to take day off work, and so I get home, and here is a man from our free press being arrested and manhandled and shackled by this man who claims he was an RCMP officer. I didn't hear anybody ask him for ID or his badge number. I didn't see him produce anything except for he's telling him that he's a cop and that's why he can rough him up for no reason. Except for, and I thought he was at a Trudeau campaign. It wasn't at a Trudeau campaign. He was at a Scheer campaign, and Scheer was at a public community center, so maybe they must have rented it, so I guess it would be their private thing. But now Scheer is taking out of Trudeau's handbook. And so, Menzie, if you ever watch that guy, he's harmless. Like, he's harmless. He's even a little goofy. But he is an accredited free press journalist, reporter. He is. I mean, that's what he's been doing with his life. So when I was hearing them say, well, you're not accredited, well, what they're saying when these control psychopaths say that I'm not accredited. I bet you most people sit in their couch and chair at home and think, oh, geez, he's not accredited, from society or whatever. No, that's just saying that the Scheer campaign doesn't recognize his accreditations as a reporter, and therefore gave them their lawful excuse to remove him, which is fine. And I'm sure they could have walked him out of there without even touching him. Now, they had no reason to lay hands on this man. Absolutely no reason. So later on, he's out on a public sidewalk, and I'm sure all you guys have seen this, but he's out on a public sidewalk, and he's about to do his report, and then he gets manhandled again. So I'm looking at this bald, whatever he is, policy enforcement officer, RCMP, who knows who he is, because he didn't identify himself. He didn't say, I am Officer, Jones, and my badge number is such and such and such, and nobody asked him. So meanwhile, I'm watching the so-called free press getting one of theirs manhandled, and not one of them stood up. So this so-called propaganda free press that receives public money through a corrupt de facto government, that's what's going on. So doesn't this guy, doesn't this totally resemble pre-World War II Germany? I'm sure there's many, many other examples. So they're after our guns, they're after our speech, they're after our freedom of movement, they're purposely ruining the economy to keep us broke and wanting. They're after our public lands. never known the government to do any kind of business successfully. Correct me if I'm wrong. I've never known the government to really do anything successfully. I mean, most of our success has been individuals, you know, a man or a woman of this nation that gave their lives for an ideal and, you know, got the respect of the population, which changed the elitist, you know, rulers' minds about certain things. I wish we had a better history about this. Then our native cousins there wouldn't have been treated so poorly for so long. And, you know, there wouldn't be such a division between, you know, our native cousins and the rest of us. But, hey, divide and conquer is not just a saying. So anytime, you know, the Gestapo comes after a guy, you got the propaganda media, and all they have to do is say, well, you're a bad guy. You're not accredited. So I went to my very first MP meeting with all the candidates yesterday. First time in my life. And I'm looking at these guys, and one thing I couldn't get off my mind. Now, the establishment spends 4 years, 5 years, 3 years, basically pushing crap down our throats. And, you know, giving us all the reasoning, you know, reasoning away all our freedoms, reasoning away all their bad actions, giving us all kinds of lawful excuses for why they are causing harm, loss, and injury to this nation, the people of this nation. And I'm looking at this guy, and he seems like a good enough guy. The MP in my riding is, or in the riding that I happen to associate with sometimes, is NDP guy. And so I'm looking at the guy, and he seems like a personable fella. You know, dresses like, kind of like, you know, middle class dude, you know, whatever, sport jacket, collar on a shirt. But I couldn't get off my mind that, and I had it, yeah, I was incorrect before. The man receives $280,000. Now this is one MP for not a real big riding. So, but he receives $280,000. So that's like $20,000 a month salary from you and I. $20,000 a month. You know, I can't add it up right now exactly what it is. I'm sure you guys already have. And then he receives $180,000 expense to run his office for the year. $280,000. Now, how can we afford to pay that kind of money to these people? And 4 years for an MP, and all of a sudden they have a pension for life as well. How is it that we can afford to do this? Our veterans are sleeping under bridges. I mean, look what the establishment did to our general, who I believe is now a senator. What was his name? You know, our cousin from Quebec, that saved all those people, as many as he could, from genocide, from slaughter. Actually, it was slaughter. Rwanda, right? And he was hauled up on the carpet for saving all those people because the UN, okay, they were having a big meeting, basically was going on, and none of those UN folks could agree on who was going to pay for saving the lives of all those people. And so he was ordered to stand out and do nothing, take off, flee, barricade themselves in, and only save their own asses. And he saved as many lives as I could. You know, I wonder if Rwanda has like a statue of the man. You know, a great Canadian patriot, a self-sacrificing man. And forgive me, I forget you. I'm really bad with names. You know, if I don't know your frickin' name, if I'm in the gulag, you know, being waterboarded, well, if I don't know your name, then I guess I can't tell your name, right? So that's just fine with me. Well, Blair, I don't know. Anyways, so here's this guy afterwards, and I'm sure he had PTSD. You know, I'm sure he had shell shock from the whole thing. And here's a man whose life is just totally ruined. His reputation ruined for being a great Canadian hero. And so, you know, I heard about him sleeping on park benches. I'm not sure if it was Harper or whatever that appointed him a senator or who, but I'll tell you, it's people like that make this nation a great nation. Not like that bald guy who said he was a cop, manhandling a harmless man like David Menzies. Really? So you were just following orders, eh? Do you think that is a lawful excuse to cause harm to your fellow man? And so if there isn't some great takeover of this nation, why is there such a big push to divide this nation from each other using, you know, sexual preferences or identity or color or background of our previous, you know, where our forebears come from? Why is the mass immigration being thrown down our throats? You know, like, wow, like, and on and on. There's so much more, and they're hitting us hard with this stuff. But if people are too afraid to speak, then we're not part of the free world, guys. We're now in servitude. And if you think you can just, a lot of people in communist Poland and so on and so forth did keep their head down, did their best not to say anything, not to make any bumps in the road, so they didn't get hauled off and just disappear. And this is why we have laws like to serve a warrant at somebody's house, home. It's supposed to be done during daylight hours. This is why there's a bond supposed to be attached to the warrant. This is why the warrant is supposed to be signed off by a judge or justice, you know, and the bond is there just in case you get the wrong man or wrong woman. And the reason you show up in daylight hours is because hoods wear masks, okay? The old word for criminal is hood. People who wear hoods to rob other people, to cause harm to other people so they can't be identified. What about the folks, the terrorists, that terrorized that little old granny? You know, somebody's mother, somebody's grandmother, somebody's great-grandmother, somebody's daughter. Wow, you disgrace. And so where was the bald man that identifies himself as a cop, as a police officer? Where was he or any of his comrades when that little old lady was being terrorized? Is terrorism not unlawful? I thought it was. I'm sure it must be in the criminal code. I bet you they got variations of it, you know, of terrorism codified. So, little old ladies being terrorized. No brave, bald officers to stand up and stop it and help that little lady get to where she was going. Harmless, mid-50s, you know, free man, acting as the free press. On the other hand, being molested and shackled by, Bob, having his rights interfered with to act as a free press within the public. I think that's backwards, guys. So how are you going to vote? We're going to get more than Trudeau? Hey, maybe we get Trudeau light. Hey, it's sheer. Yeah. Why are we paying any media, any public money at all? Why are we paying any corporation, any public money at all? So, how soon before you're sticking out that you didn't keep your head down, that you looked up, and the bald man just doing the fulfilling his orders comes to waterboard you, interfere with your right to be let alone? How long before that happens to you? That's quite an interesting thought, isn't it? Because you and I are next. Oh yeah. This is how they work. Read a little bit of history. Just read a little bit of history. And see what happens. I like the Romanian history. Just because it was fairly recent and the students of the day finally got them out, but the country is still destroyed. The country is still in ruins. You know, it's never been brought out. So here they pay a little more attention to us because the land mass here, the people's resources of this land is vastly rich. So, you know, God forbid if you think about touching any of it, your own resources, and God forbid that you know what. Look, the Consolidated Revenue Fund that is filled up with our royalties, you know, that belong to the people. How about just anybody born here gets a check, and the government can have, well, we got computers and stuff for, you know, we don't need a big staff to hand out these checks. We got computers and stuff to, what do you say, you know, figure out and send a check to everybody. So anybody here that has a record, you know, a live birth record, the registration of live birth is what they built the birth certificate off. So anybody with the registration of live birth should just get their piece of the coin that we can spend it on what we wish. And if you wish to have some money from us, you can ask us. Go ahead. There we go. Alright guys, I'm out. Cheers.